Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, just staring up at the dark ceiling, listening to that unmistakable, frantic scratching sound of a pest scurrying around inside your walls?
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows that sound.
Right. If you've been there, you know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah.
Is this very specific, really mundane frustration.
You immediately start doing the mental math on exterminator costs.
Exactly. You wonder where the entry point is, you think about traps. But what if that purely mundane annoyance, that scratching right above your head, what if that actually holds the key to understanding human history, the physical laws of the universe, and, I mean, even your own personal peace of mind?
It is quite the philosophical leap, I have to say. You're taking this highly localized pest problem and basically using it as a lens to view the fundamental boundaries of existence.
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
But when you really examine the mechanics of it, it's a profound exercise in perspective.
And that is exactly what we are exploring today on this deep dive. We are looking at an essay titled Do What Should Be Done, Avoid What Shouldn't, written by Zhifeng, and the translation was edited by Kinyu.
It's a really fascinating piece of writing.
It is. The mission of this deep dive is to explore how this simple observation about a family of mice living in a ceiling, how it scales all the way up into this sweeping look at restraint, power, and the absolute limits of human ambition.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start with the literal situation on the ground, or, well, in the ceiling, I guess, because the specific details of this encounter, they really set the rules for the rest of the philosophy.
Yeah, the scenario is something anyone can relate to. The writer's just stepping into the shower and hears these mice scurrying across the ceiling boards above. But, there's a crucial detail that changes the whole nature of the encounter.
Right, the sound.
Exactly. It isn't just the heavy scratching of an adult mouse. There's the distinct squeaking of babies.
Which completely changes the math. Like, you aren't just dealing with a stray invader anymore.
Yeah.
Precisely. The realization is that a pair of mice have settled down. They are actively raising a family. The essay notes that they are up there enjoying their domestic bliss.
Wow. Domestic bliss for mice.
Right. And the typical human reaction here is immediate zero tolerance of addiction. You lay traps, you call pest control, but the writer pauses. They assess the actual mechanics of the situation. What is the material damage?
And it turns out it's pretty minimal, right?
Very minimal. The mice are just sneaking down to steal a little bit of dog food. That is the entire extent of their mischief. They haven't chewed through live electrical wires. They aren't destroying the drywall. They aren't spreading disease through the living spaces.
So it's contained.
Exactly. Because the impact is so localized and relatively harmless, the writer makes a conscious decision to just, well, suspend the eviction.
But it's not a blank check. That's what I found so interesting about this part. The tolerance isn't driven by some, naive or endless compassion. It is highly conditional.
Oh, absolutely.
The writer essentially issues this silent ultimatum to the mice. They acknowledge that nature granted these creatures survival skills. I mean, they have an inherent right to exist, to build a nest, to feed their young.
And the writer feels they don't have the right to unilaterally deprive them of that basic existence.
Exactly. However, that right to exist is bounded by a very strict set of parameters. The writer mentally draws a hard line.
Yeah, and that line is very clear. If the mice start overbreeding to the point of an infestation, or if they start gnawing through structural beams, if they destroy the integrity of the home, the tolerance vanishes.
It's gone.
The consequence will be immediate and catastrophic for the mice. The writer says they will either bring in a cat or lay down poison.
I was thinking about this, and it's basically the ultimate cosmic landlord agreement.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. It's a lease with hiker-specific eviction clauses based entirely on the concept of restraint. You can live in the ceiling, you can skim a little off the top of the dog food bowl, but the absolute second you start tearing up the floorboards and acting like you own the house, the lease is terminated, and the eviction process is a literal predator.
And importantly, the boundary exists whether the mice are aware of the lease agreement or not.
Oh, that's true. They have no idea.
They might be completely oblivious to the danger they are in, operating purely on instinct. But their ignorance of the rule doesn't protect them from the consequences if they break it. This establishes the baseline for the entire philosophy we're looking at today. Survival depends entirely on knowing what to do, and critically, what not to do.
If that's the micro scale, things get incredibly humbling when the essay zooms out. Because the writer doesn't just, leave this as a cute anecdote about household pests. They explicitly compare their attitude toward these ceiling mice to the greatest creator's attitude toward humanity.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the analogy functions as a severe warning about human behavior. Just as the mice must operate within strict bounds to avoid triggering the arrival of the cat, humanity must maintain constant vigilance over its own ambitions.
I have to admit, I found that comparison a little jarring. We are so conditioned to view ourselves as the masters of the earth. Like, we are the ones running the house.
All right, the apex predators.
Yeah. Wait, so are we the mice stealing the cosmic dog food?
Mm.
That's a bit humbling. It flips our entire sense of entitlement on its head. It suggests we are merely tenants, tolerated only as long as we don't start destroying the planetary drywall.
It is a deliberate challenge to our anthropocentrism, for sure. The warning here is mechanical. If humanity acts recklessly, if we consume resources without limit, if we indulge our desires and disregard the structural integrity of the environment we live in, we cross the boundary.
And then the eviction clause kicks in.
Exactly. And when that boundary is crossed, a cosmic cat or poison might naturally manifest to restore balance, often through our own destruction. To illustrate the scale of this, the essay actually poses a highly provocative question. It asks, could the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami have been such a cat?
And to be clear, for you listening, we aren't exploring this to endorse a specific theological explanation for natural disasters. The text isn't a political or religious statement we're validating.
No, not at all.
But the writer uses that horrific event to force a very uncomfortable question. Are there systemic consequences to human overreach that we are completely oblivious to, just like the mice in the ceiling?
Exactly. The concept points heavily toward the laws of the Tao. We need to understand the Tao not just as, like, mystical poetry, but as the fundamental operating system of the universe.
The actual physics of it.
Right. In human society, you might be clever enough to evade punishment. You might hoard wealth, exploit a community, and walk away clean because human laws are imperfect.
Happens all the time.
But you cannot evade natural law. The Tao represents an inescapable physical and spiritual equilibrium. If you pull the pendulum too far in one direction through greed or arrogance, the release of that stored energy is inevitable.
So if the universe operates on this strict mechanism of equilibrium, we should be able to see it play out when people try to hoard power, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at history, it's right there.
Yeah.
The essay brings up some stark contrasts of leaders who either understood their boundaries or were totally destroyed by ignoring them.
The contrast between Yuan Shikai and George Washington is a perfect example of this mechanism at work.
Oh, yeah, tell us about that.
Well, Yuan Shikai was a Chinese general who, in the early 20th century, attempted to restore the monarchy and declare himself emperor. He blatantly disregarded the moral and political boundaries of his time, acting purely on this ambition to seize absolute control.
And the blowback was immediate. He triggered the cat. The pushback from the provinces and his own military was so severe he had to back down almost instantly, and his legacy was permanently ruined. He is reviled for generations.
Contrast that with George Washington, who exercised profound restraint.
Yeah.
At a time when he could have easily leveraged his popularity and his military backing to hold on to power indefinitely, he stepped away after 2 terms. He knew what not to do. And because he respected that boundary, his legacy was secured for centuries.
But the example that really clarifies the mechanics of this is Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of unified China. The essay doesn't deny his capabilities at all. Unifying China was a monumental achievement of strategy and willpower.
It was historically unprecedented.
Right, but his ability to conquer wasn't matched by an ability to restrain himself. Here's where it gets really interesting.
He achieved the unification, but then he tried to monopolize reality itself.
Yes.
He famously ordered the burning of books and the burying alive of scholars. He wasn't just trying to rule, he was trying to eradicate any dissenting thought or alternative historical record.
And it's not just that burning books is a terrible, immoral thing to do. It's that mechanically, it destroys the system you're trying to rule. I look at absolute power like an incredibly lavish, massive buffet.
Okay, a buffet.
Yeah, just think about it. Power, resources, and good fortune are all laid out. And if you are an emperor, you have the strength to push everyone else out of the room and pile every single prime rib and crab leg onto your own plate.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you can hoard everything doesn't mean your body can process it.
Right, you can't eat it all.
Exactly. 2 things happen. First, you starve everyone else, which obviously breeds resentment and rebellion. Second, you make yourself violently ill. You literally cannot digest it all. Overreach violates a natural limit of consumption.
That buffet analogy perfectly captures the mechanics of what the essay calls heaven's scales of justice.
Heaven's scales, yeah.
When Xin Shi Huang burned the books, he removed the intellectual feedback loops that keep a society stable. He hoarded control, and in doing so, created a pressure cooker that guaranteed his dynasty would collapse shortly after his death.
It's self-defeating.
Completely. And the essay points out a beautiful nuance here. Heaven has its scales, but even the most ordinary, ignorant person has this scale of justice built into their own heart. Deep down, the collective recognizes when the balance of the buffet, as you put it, is broken.
You just can't fool the collective gut. I mean, a leader might hoard the buffet and use propaganda to convince people everything is fine for a little while. They might enjoy some temporary success.
But as the text stresses, you may deceive some people for a time, but you cannot deceive everyone forever. The internal scale of justice eventually tips.
It always tips.
Whether you are an emperor commanding armies or a manager running a small team, the rule is identical. You must know when to stop. You cannot monopolize all the benefits of a system without destroying the system itself.
So, if absolute power turns historical figures into cautionary tales, it forces a really practical question. How do everyday people protect themselves from that same creeping arrogance? Like, how does a community actually practice this philosophy on a Tuesday?
Right, in daily life.
Yeah. And the essay grounds these lofty cosmic concepts by looking at the rules of the Life Chanyuan.
For context, the Life Chanyuan is described in the source as a spiritual and lifestyle community the author is associated with. They focus on cultivating inner peace and spiritual growth. And to avoid the kind of overreach that triggers disaster, the members hold themselves to an incredibly stringent standard.
Tell me about the guiding metaphor they use.
The metaphor is that they must live as if they are walking a tightrope or treading on thin ice.
Treading on thin ice is such a visceral image. It demands hyper-awareness of your weight, your distribution, your impact on the environment around you. You can't just stomp around blindly.
You really can't.
And the actual rules they use to maintain this balance are fascinating. For instance, they have a strict rule regarding things they don't understand. They must remain silent. Let me push back on this, though, because I'm trying to wrap my head around how this works in practice.
Yeah.
In today's world, silence is often framed as complicity. We have access to global information, and there is immense cultural pressure to have a hot take on every political shift, market trend, or social movement.
Oh, constant pressure.
Right. So if this community just stays silent on complex issues, aren't they just burying their heads in the sand? How's that not just willful ignorance?
It's a very modern dilemma, but the text frames this silence not as indifference, but as profound caution. What's fascinating here is the recognition of human limitation.
Okay, human limitation.
Think about it. When you engage in endless debates about global politics or complex market systems without deep specialized knowledge, you aren't actually contributing solutions. You are just adding noise and ego to a system you don't fully grasp.
So just adding static.
Exactly. By admitting they are amateurs in those spheres, they avoid participating in zero-sum conflicts where one side must crush the other. They conserve their energy for areas where they can actually affect positive change, their own spiritual and communal behavior.
So it's an intentional retreat from the ego-driven need to be right about everything.
That makes sense.
It actually leads into another rule that I found incredibly liberating. The essay says for this community, it is perfectly okay if they do not produce masterpieces, so long as they do not create garbage.
That principle is a direct counter to the modern obsession with constant optimization and relentless output. We are pressured to always be maximizing our potential, to always be crushing it.
Well, we're always crushing it, yeah.
But the Life Chanyuan rule suggests that the mere act of restraint, the discipline of simply not adding toxicity or useless clutter to the world, is a virtue in itself.
It applies to their interpersonal rules, too.
Sure.
It's okay if you can't maintain perfect peace as long as you don't instigate chaos. It's okay if you aren't in a position to actively help someone as long as you ensure you don't harm them.
It's basically a spiritual Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm.
Yes. The baseline is always about holding back negative impact. They deliberately leave massive spheres of human, endeavor-like administration, politics, economics. They leave those to others.
And that is the crucial mechanical safeguard. By staying in their designated lane, they refuse to monopolize the dog food, to use our earlier metaphor. They leave room for others to thrive in those areas. This self-imposed limitation is precisely how they maintain their structural integrity and avoid the historical trap of someone like Qin Shi Huang.
So we've looked at the philosophy through the lens of household pests, human history, and community rules. But the essay takes one final step. It anchors all of this in the undeniable physical laws of nature. It argues that restraint isn't just a polite moral suggestion, it is quite literally the physics of survival.
You really cannot argue with the mechanics of the natural world. The essay points to the Earth itself. Our planet only sustains life because it obediently stays within its specific gravitational orbit around the sun.
Right. If the Earth were capable of ambition, if it decided it wanted to conquer more space and drifted closer to the sun, everything burns.
Everything.
If it drifts further away, everything freezes. The boundary is absolute.
The same applies across the animal kingdom. Tigers, gazelles, mice, cockroaches, they all have specific ecological niches. They survive because they operate within those boundaries.
And if they don't?
If a species overpopulates and strips its environment bare, it triggers a catastrophic collapse. The conclusion drawn here is that humanity cannot conquer heaven or the natural order. We can only align with it.
Align with it. The essay points to ancient wisdom to show how humans can successfully do this, specifically mentioning the legendary figure of Yu the Great. He is famous in Chinese history for managing catastrophic floods. But what's vital is how he did it.
Yeah, earlier attempts to stop the floods relied on building massive walls and dams to block the water. But mechanically, when you block a massive force, you only build up pressure until the structure violently fails.
It's just a matter of time.
Yu the Great understood that you cannot defeat the nature of water. Instead, he dredged new channels and canals. He directed the water, leaving it to flow where it naturally wanted to go, but in a way that safely bypassed the populations.
He didn't fight the force, he accommodated it. The essay uses a very modern metaphor for this. It says a reservoir must have a spillway. If you build a massive dam to hold back water, you have to build a controlled release channel.
Otherwise, a heavy rain will overtop the dam and destroy everything downstream.
Right. That physical engineering principle perfectly mirrors the psychological and spiritual philosophy we've been discussing. I think that the spillway is the ultimate analogy for how we handle our own ambitions.
How so?
Well, we all have drives, desires, and ego building up inside of us. And the takeaway here isn't that you must completely eradicate those drives. The writer didn't exterminate the mice just because they were hungry. He recognized their right to exist. But if you're going to hold power or ambition, you must engineer a spillway. You need a way to channel that energy safely so your internal dam doesn't burst and flood the valley of your own life.
That requires deep self-awareness, though, to know when the water level is getting too high.
Definitely.
The essay concludes by referencing Confucius, who famously stated that at the age of 50, he finally understood the will of heaven.
Wow. 50.
Yeah. And the writer of this essay humbly notes that as they approach 50, they haven't quite grasped the full will of heaven yet. But they are absolutely certain of one fundamental truth. A sage must know what to do, and critically, what not to do.
So what does this all mean for us? If we pull all these threads together, the journey is astonishing. We started with the scurrying of baby mice in a shower ceiling, just trying to secure a few pieces of dog food.
And we scaled up to the rise and catastrophic fall of emperors.
Exactly. The strict rules of a spiritual community, the gravitational orbit of the Earth, and the engineering of floodwaters. And through every single layer, the mechanism is exactly the same. Survival requires restraint.
It is the defining line between existing in harmony and inviting the cosmic cat to restore the balance you broke.
Precisely. And as you go about your life this week, it is really worth remembering the power of staying within your orbit. There is profound peace in leaving some of the dog food for others. There is relief in realizing you don't need a hot take on every single issue.
Just because you have the power to take something from the buffet doesn't mean your life will be better if you do.
Restraint is not weakness. It is the ultimate form of structural integrity.
Well said.
And keeping with the engineering metaphor we just explored, I want to leave you with a question to mull over on your own. If you are the reservoir, constantly gathering knowledge, accumulating resources, or building ambition in your career or personal life, what is your spillway? What is the intentional, disciplined practice you use to release that pressure safely, ensuring you respect your own boundaries before a cat suddenly appears?